Good evening and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Wednesday the 25th of August and this is Scotland at 7. I'm Andrew Wilson and this evening I'm hosting the programme from Edinburgh. First, we will look at today's coronavirus update, then I'll introduce this evening's guest, and then we'll discuss the stories behind today's news headlines together. First of all, there is our coronavirus update. As of 2 p.m. today, since the start of the pandemic, a total of 2,667,731 people in Scotland have been tested through the NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres. Of these, 2,271,813 have been confirmed negative, and 395,918 have tested positive. There are 5,021 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. I'm sorry to say that there are 5 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive in Scotland. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 8,085. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 391 were in hospital last night, 44 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. this morning, 4,088,894 people had received their first dose of the vaccination, and 3,603,429 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show that 132,003 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness. That's an increase of 149 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just in hospitals. And as it's a Wednesday, we also have an update from National Records of Scotland. As at the 22nd of August, 10,505 deaths have been registered in Scotland where coronavirus was mentioned on the death certificate, according to statistics published today by National Records of Scotland. In the week between the 16th and the 22nd of August, 41 deaths were registered that mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate, the same number as last week. 12 deaths were people aged under 65, 6 were people aged between 65 and 74, and there were 23 deaths of people aged 75 or over. 28 deaths were male and 13 were female. The number of deaths from all causes registered in Scotland in this week was 1,163. That's 171 or 17% higher than the 5-year rolling average. Now, having completed the coronavirus update for this evening, I'd like to introduce our guest for this evening's programme. We're lucky enough to be joined this evening by a good friend to the programme, Chris McCusker. Chris has been an aid worker and disabilities advocate amongst many other roles and is a member of the SNP's Trades Union Group, Friends of Palestine Group and Socialists Group. Chris, it's been a couple of weeks since you and I last spoke. How are you keeping this evening?
I'm Andrew, and hopefully there'll be no communication issues in our transmission this evening. I always look forward to our chats. It's like actually just discussing the news items, but without the beer in between.
We'll need to see what we can do about that.
Indeed.
Our first story this evening, Chris, is the announcement of the Scottish NHS Recovery Plan. The Scottish Government has published its NHS Recovery Plan, committing more than £1 billion of targeted investment for the recovery and renewal of Scotland's health service. It sets out key actions for the next 5 years to help address backlogs in healthcare and to increase capacity by at least 10%. The plan outlines a range of reforms across primary and acute NHS services to help recover from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and to get everyone the treatment that they need as quickly as possible. A key aim in primary care is to restore face-to-face GP consultations as quickly and as safely as possible, while ensuring everyone can continue to make use of the e-health services like NHS Near Me, if that is their preference. The government is also bolstering the NHS Pharmacy First scheme to enhance the range of services that patients can access from community pharmacists without having to go to their GP. In acute care, the government is increasing capacity for inpatients, day cases, outpatients, and diagnostics. Prior to the pandemic, Scotland's NHS carried out approximately 270,000 inpatient day cases per year, and approximately 1.4 million outpatient appointments. Through this plan, the government intends to work to increase NHS capacity substantially beyond those levels. A priority within the plan is to focus on the health and well-being of NHS staff who have given so much, particularly during the pandemic. The actions in the recovery plan include increasing investment in national treatment centres to more than £400 million, contributing to delivery of over 40,000 additional elective surgeries and procedures every year. Raising primary care investment by 25%, supporting GPs, community pharmacists, dentists and optometrists. Investing £29 million to target diagnostic backlogs, providing 78,000 additional procedures in 21-22 and rising to 90,000 per year from 2025 to 2026. Providing £8 million to support the mental health and well-being of the health and care workforce. Investing £11 million in new national and international recruitment campaigns to produce an additional 1,500 staff over the next 5 years for the national treatment centres, 1,000 mental health linked workers in communities, 800 more GPs, and also boosting paramedic numbers through the £10,000 paramedic bursary. Delivering £23 million to redesign urgent care, with rapid access to a senior clinician via a telephone or video consultation where possible, reducing the pressure on A&E. Devoting £130 million to deliver the National Cancer Plan and Detect Cancer early programmes, and ensuring at least 10% of frontline health spending is dedicated to mental health, and recruiting 320 additional child and adolescent mental health services workers. The First Minister Nicola Sturgeon was joined by Health Secretary Humza Yousaf to launch the NHS Recovery Plan during a visit to the new National Centre for Sustainable Delivery, which will play a key role in supporting improvements in outpatient and inpatient capacity as well as diagnostics. The First Minister said, "This plan will drive the recovery of our NHS, not just to its pre-pandemic level, but beyond. Tackling the backlog of care is essential and will be a priority, but we want to go further than that and deliver an NHS that is innovative, sustainable, and stronger than ever before." So, Chris, what's your initial reaction to this news today?
Well, the first thing that I need to point out is that this £1 billion announcement is actually over and above what's already been allocated for the Scottish NHS through the budget. So that being said, I think it's wonderful news. It's going to help to radically change how the infrastructure of the NHS is going to operate. And going forward, obviously, I was very keen to hear about the investment into mental health. It's a subject that's dear to my heart. Even the numbers cited for recruitment, I think is far-reaching, innovative, and much needed, of course. And the other thing that strikes me is the fact that, as welcome as this news story is, we're not hearing an awful lot about the supposed investment, down south. This is all, it seems like an action plan that is, definitely started, going to be delivered, whereas you hear the platitudes and rhetoric from Westminster about the supposed 40 plus hospitals that they're going to build within the next, millennium. Uh, so I mean, this is real hard, fast action, and it should be lauded, of course.
Now, Chris, we're all service users of Scotland's NHS in one way or another, either personally or through our families. From your own experience as a service user, is there anything in the action plan today that stands out for you?
Well, touch wood. Thankfully, I've not needed any urgent surgery. But I would possibly speak with my trade union hat on, and again commend the engagement that the Scottish Government have had with the various unions that are involved in the NHS, such as Unite and Unison, to name but a few. And again, I have to point out the fact that even if we just look at the investment drive that they're doing for paramedics, I mean, that's going to obviously help greatly in the response times, going forward, as well as the getting back to normal GP practices is going to be a boon. Funnily enough, I had the pleasure or the unfortunate pleasure to take my ex-wife to accident and emergency last night as she cut her finger when she was clearing some glass from her kitchen sink. So that itself going forward, people need to have that service, and knowing the fact that there is investment going into that service is obviously heart. It's got to be commended.
Absolutely, Chris, and also in part with a trade union hat on, but also, as I say, as a citizen and as a service user. In this list, do you think there is sufficient attention being paid to healthcare workers in this list of actions?
Well, yes, because there's a great emphasis on the mental health of healthcare workers, which has obviously been stretched to the limit during the COVID pandemic. And whilst we're not at what you would say exceptional levels, we're definitely at a concerning level where people are forced to take a break from their duties because of being basically constant. I think when you're a health worker, although it's not written into your contract, you are pretty much, uh, shall we say, you're pretty much on on call, even although you're not on call, if you know what I mean. You're ready for the phone to ring at any given minute because nobody can plan for when any sort of like disasters or accidents or pandemics even can actually occur. So I think obviously a greater emphasis on the NHS workers' mental health, and again has to be commended.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. We'll move on now, but the point about essential and skilled workers, I think we'll be discussing it again later on in this programme. Do you think that, just to finish on the NHS for a moment, do you think that generally NHS healthcare workers are now being recognised as both technically essential and skilled workers, but are the population regarding them now? Anyone working in the healthcare sector, are they getting the recognition that they deserve as a result of the pandemic, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a natural course of progression because of the amount of people who are now relying on the NHS, to be there, in any eventuality. I was also contacted about half an hour before the show started that my youngest son has been pinged and as a close contact within his workplace. And he's now having to self-isolate for 7 days. So if that infrastructure wasn't in place to start with, then we would be fighting a losing battle. So going forward, whether it's people who are operating the COVID infrastructure, or whether it's people actually working in the primary service of hospitals, or secondary service, and the likes of care homes and all the rest of it. I know myself, being as an unpaid carer, the Scottish Government have told us all that we are invaluable for the work that we do, which we have been recompensed for that, in some way of recognition. But going forward, again, this is the start of the Scottish Government having a look at how they can radically change health and social care within Scotland, going forward, being fit for the new millennium.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. We'll move on to our second story, which is a return to an examination of the events that are unfolding in Afghanistan. Western nations continued to rush to evacuate people from Afghanistan as the August 31st deadline for the withdrawal of foreign troops drew closer, and fears grew that many could be left behind to an uncertain fate under the country's new Taliban leaders. In one of the biggest airlifts ever, the United States and its allies have now evacuated more than 70,000 people, including their own citizens, NATO personnel, and Afghans at risk since August the 14th, and that's the day before the Taliban swept into the capital, Kabul, to bring an end to the 20-year foreign military presence. US President Joe Biden said US troops in Afghanistan faced mounting danger, while aid agencies warned of an impending humanitarian crisis for those left behind. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the deadline for evacuating people was up to the last minute of the month. France said it would push on with evacuations as long as possible, but it was likely to end these operations in the coming hours or days. Chancellor Angela Merkel said Germany would try to help Afghans who worked with its soldiers and aid organisations and who wished to leave Afghanistan after the deadline expires. Tens of thousands of Afghans fearing persecution have thronged Kabul's airport since the Taliban takeover, the lucky ones securing seats on flights. Many people milled about outside the airport, where soldiers from the United States, UK and other nations were trying to maintain order amid the dust and heat and folks hoping to get out. They carried bags and suitcases stuffed with possessions and waved documents at soldiers in the hope of gaining entry to the airport. One man standing knee-deep in a flooded ditch passed a child to a man standing above him. So, Chris, it's the 25th now. There's a week until the deadline. What do you fear will happen now?
I fear that many Afghans who are at the airport at this moment in time will be left behind, and that, I'm sad to say, is the reality of the situation. Biden has made it abundantly clear that he will not move from this date that's been set, which is absolutely horrendous, and we really shouldn't have been holding out any hope for Boris Johnson to petition at the recent meeting of the G7 for America to go that one step further. That's actually required. And you're right to highlight the fact that this is obviously a humanitarian disaster. I can't use any other word than that, because it is a complete disaster. And this could have easily have been avoided had action been taken a lot earlier. There is no one that's going to tell me that Dominic Raab didn't know or couldn't foresee, the possible outcome of this issue. And again, I have to point out that there was nearly, again, nearly 20,000 odd children at that airport. Whether they were accompanied with families or I mean, some people were just actually holding their documents, even although they weren't related to them. In order to hopefully it was going to be a kind of scenario of women and children first. And okay, they've got procedures in place, they've got protocols in place, and they're trying to do it in an orderly fashion to get people out. But by the same token, when you've got that level of desperation, as we witnessed one gentleman trying to hand a child over the fence, that is, where it's at. That should tell everybody what they need to know about the state of affairs on the ground in Kabul at this moment in time.
Well, it's a good point that you make, Chris. My understanding, the agreement, the contract that was signed between the U.S. State Department and the Taliban, I think that was signed back in February 2020, and here we are now with it 1 week to go, and there is panic and confusion, and now an attempt to deliver the largest evacuation of its type so far. Why do you think it is that we find ourselves in a situation with this? Is it that people, the governments don't care, or that they're not paying attention, or that they're just terribly bad at organising stuff?
I would say a mixture of all the points that you mentioned there, Andrew, and throughout my political involvement of what, say, 35 years, I've always believed that if there's a political will to do something, then something will get done. So, and let me qualify that the actual political will involves two sides sitting down and discussing the ramifications of their proposed actions. And that takes into effect, obviously, the situation that they're dealing with and the aftermath of the situation, which is arising. So there has to be a greater level of communication, obviously, and I don't think, with the best will in the world, that the current cabinet that we've got in government that are forced upon Scotland are any such way, shape or form professional politicians. It has been quoted that I find this really bizarre what I'm about to say, but it has been quoted that this government is actually worse than the government of Margaret Thatcher. And everybody in Scotland knows what Margaret Thatcher's government done to Scotland. Just stand back and think for a second as to what this government, this current government, is doing to the UK as a whole, right at this moment in time, because there are no statesmen in there. There are no brokers. There are no, there is nobody with experience of brinkmanship or willing sort of like peace envoys in any such way. You only have to look at the fact that they've appointed Ian Botham as a trade envoy to New Zealand, for Christ's sake, or Australia, and David Mundell. I mean, this is the level of people that we're dealing with, and it's absolutely shambolic.
No, your point's absolutely right, Chris. Dominic Raab was doing the rounds of the TV studios this morning, and you were talking there about politicians doing something. Do you buy his insistence that he made this morning that he was doing something from holiday, and that anyway the beaches in Crete were closed, according to him?
No, absolutely not. And it has been actually documented that the beaches have been open. And and Twitter has been awash with various cartoons and memes or whatever it's called of red flags on beaches and mention of the scene from Jaws of don't go in the water routine and all that kind of caper. It's honestly it's laughable, and I go back to the fact that politicians at one point in time when I was growing up, in my formative years within the Labour Party, politicians had a certain amount of credibility about them. I mean, even though you could say that they were devious, they were cunning, or they were up to something, or they were lining their pockets allegedly, they still had a certain amount of credibility about them. And they were looked upon in high esteem. You're looking at Westminster now, and people are looking upon them as a complete joke.
Absolutely, Chris. Thanks for that. We haven't yet been able to follow up on reports that you mentioned, Ian, Lord Botham there. We haven't been able to follow up on the reports that Liz Truss has appointed the children's TV character Rastamouse to be the trade envoy for the Caribbean, but we will follow that story up.
Brilliant. Can I just actually clarify something, Andrew, please? I need to clarify, doing a bit of research earlier on today for a subject that we'll discuss at the end of the programme, hopefully. But it was 10 million children, as quoted by UNICEF, who are in Afghanistan, who are in a desperate need of humanitarian assistance. And that is, in itself, is a horrendous number. When you think that the children in Afghanistan are already surviving on humanitarian assistance, there are approximately 1 million are expected to suffer from life-threatening malnutrition this year just alone. And when you look at pictures, in social media and in the daily newsprint of warnings of empty shelves and stuff like that in Britain, which hopefully we'll be able to discuss as well. And yet you look at other pictures with regards France, Belgium, and Spain, Italy, all the shelves are full. Now that tells you something. That tells you something that Britain is not best placed to even begin to help in any sort of humanitarian aid towards Afghanistan with regards food and supplies. So that should be worrying in itself.
It's a good point that you make there, Chris. We will definitely talk about both those topics in the course of the programme this evening. What we'll do first is we'll come back to Scotland, and the Scottish Government has delivered 80 priorities set out by the First Minister after the election in May. These commitments have been delivered across government and ministerial portfolios, covering health and care, economy, climate change, communities, children and families, and how the government leads Scotland safely through and out of the pandemic. The Deputy First Minister, John Swinney, said, "Recovery from the pandemic is an urgent priority for the government, and I am proud of the bold, ambitious and transformative measures we have delivered in just 100 days. But this is only the beginning, and there is much more we can and will do to build a fairer and more sustainable country as we continue to drive Scotland's recovery from the pandemic. We have introduced coordinated and targeted policies which deliver demonstrable positive change for the people, families and communities who need it most, and for our economy, public services and environment." Delivering on the commitments that the First Minister made in May demonstrates the government's progress in taking the steps needed to make lasting and generational change and to improve the lives of people across Scotland. Those achievements include consulting on the creation of a national care service to improve social care for everyone who needs it, funding for 1,000 extra teachers and 500 pupil support assistants, doubling the Carers Allowance Supplement this winter through the introduction of the Carers Allowance Supplement Scotland Bill, publishing the recovery plan for the NHS, £25 million to help small and medium businesses use digital technology and upskill employees, free NHS dental care for all young people under the age of 26, opening 3 new rapid cancer diagnostic centres, tackling loneliness and social isolation, particularly among young and disabled people, delivering free school lunches for more than 90,000 children, appointing environmental champions to advise the government on international best practice, and launching the new Green Jobs Work Academy to help people to get the skills they need to move into new, greener jobs. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about a few of those actions that have been delivered later in the programme, including the Scottish 4G infill programme. But Chris, what's your immediate response to the announcement that these 80 priorities have been actioned?
Well, again, with my trade union hat on, obviously the investment going forward into the jobs that have been mentioned, but also the other thing that sticks out for me, Andrew, is the free school lunches for 90,000 children. And that is helping to drive down the inequality and the poverty gap that has been exacerbated by the conditions that we are currently living under by the Westminster government. Due to the fact that Scotland cannot borrow in order to solve some of our problems. So it's worth mentioning that all those bullet points that you just read out there, I should have actually have responded by saying, I know that done with one hand tied behind her back. And with that statement, I could also counter it by saying, now just think what Scotland could do if it had both hands free. And that is what we need to do. We need to drive towards moving out of this pandemic, but moving out of this pandemic as an independent, preferably socialist Republic of Scotland. But what the work that we are doing now, or should I say the Scottish Government are doing now, in order to, address the problems that have been highlighted by the pandemic. It is about the recovery out of the pandemic and setting Scotland in a path towards its future. And we can only take that path once we are free from, the cabal down in Westminster who are fantastically making a complete cock-up of absolutely everything on the home front and, as we discussed, on matters overseas.
Absolutely, Chris, thank you. And we'll move on now to talk a little bit more about the home front, as you put it. And the UK government must allow retailers to recruit HGV drivers from abroad to avoid a supply chain crisis that could ruin Christmas, a senior supermarket chain boss has warned. Richard Walker, Iceland's MD, said the UK faced a shortage of 100,000 drivers that was already causing 30 to 40 deliveries to its stores to be cancelled every day, and would upend plans to begin building Christmas stock from next month. We've got Christmas round the corner, and in retail we start to stock build really from September onwards for what is a hugely important time of year, he told BBC Radio 4's Today programme. We've got a lot of goods to transport between now and Christmas, and a strong supply chain is vital for everyone. The reason for sounding the alarm now is that we've already had one Christmas cancelled, and I'd hate this one to be problematic as well. The HGV driver shortage has caused cancelled orders for fast-moving food products such as bread at about 100 Iceland stores, and deliveries of soft drinks had fallen by 50% by volume, he said. It has also led to disruption across the UK's fast food sector after milkshakes were cut from the menu at McDonald's and Nando's was forced to close about 50 restaurants because of a shortage of chicken. Walker said the shortfall in lorry drivers was not an inevitable consequence of post-Brexit EU immigration rules, but was a self-inflicted wound created by the government's failure to appreciate the importance of HGV drivers and the work they do for us. He said the simple solution is that HGV lorry drivers need to be added to the essential and skilled worker list, like other professions, such as ballerinas. These HGV drivers have kept the show on the road for 18 months during the pandemic, and it's criminal that we're not viewing them as skilled workers. It would take 4 to 6 weeks to recruit foreign drivers, Walker said, so even if the government immediately added them to the skilled workers list, a solution to the UK's supply chain crisis would not happen overnight. The shortfall of lorry drivers has largely been caused by post-Brexit EU immigration rules and has been exacerbated by COVID-19 restrictions and self-isolation guidance. So, Chris, we were talking before about essential and skilled workers. Do you think that Mr. Walker is correct when he calls on the government to add HGV drivers to that list of workers?
He's 100% correct, 110% correct, to be perfectly frank. And it's not just Richard Walker that's calling for this. The CEO of Tesco, one of the biggest supermarkets in Britain, which is very loyal to the Conservative Party, very loyal to the whole Brexit cause and all the rest of it. He was quoted as saying, at the moment, we are running very hard just to keep on top of the existing demand, and there isn't the capacity to build up the stocks that we need in the run up to Christmas. Now, in one of my former, years, I was actually a grocery manager for Safeway. And I know exactly what's involved in the logistics. I used to work for the Space Planning Department down in, more notably Wolverhampton, but also just up at Nantwich. And again, the distribution of any, one given high street retailer would mind boggle you beyond all recognition. Just one truck basically holds about 2 stores' supply. Normally, the likes of the Morrison store at Crossmaloof, I'm just talking off the top of my head here, 45,000 square feet. It would get between 8 and 12 pallets. And the actual size of one of the trucks normally can hold about 32 pallets. So between sort of like maybe 4 sort of like average placed orders that any store would do on an overnight basis, because everything's all computerized. As soon as you buy something, if something comes in a packet of 6, as soon as 6 pots of jam go through the till, then one case automatically generated, and that gets put on, to the existing order. So when you think of it on that scale and what's required in order to, sustain that, you need an army of HGV drivers. And I've got a great idea that I'll put to any trade body or any trade secretary. I'll even put it to Priti Patel. But there are more than 200,000 migrants stuck in France at this moment in time who would love to be able to have a sustainable job in order to provide for their families. So why don't you bring them over to Britain and give them free lessons on how to drive trucks?
Thanks, Chris. We'll need to move on now. We'll talk now about a little more detail in connection with the announcement of the implementation of the Scottish Government's 100 days priorities. And firstly, the next steps in reforming the agriculture sector in Scotland and supporting farmers and crofters to cut emissions and produce sustainable, high-quality food have been set out today by Rural Affairs Secretary Marie Gudgeon. Individuals representing land-based businesses covering a range of farming, geographical and environmental interests have been appointed to a new gender-balanced board called the Agriculture Reform Implementation Oversight Board, which is co-chaired by the Cabinet Secretary and the NFU Scotland President Martin Kennedy. It will help to develop new proposals for sustainable farming support by considering the Climate Change Plan update and the farmer-led group's recommendations alongside industry reports. The group will place farmers and crofters at the heart of a future support framework and help Scottish agriculture become more economically and environmentally sustainable. In order to deliver early action on implementing measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture, the group will develop a preliminary package of funded measures for agreement by COP26. It will be based on the work of the farmer-led groups with an early focus on livestock emissions, in particular the detailed work taken forward to a more advanced stage by the suckler beef group. This work should quickly reach as many farms and crofts as possible and ultimately will assist all parts of Scottish agriculture as Scotland progresses to net zero. The group will be supported throughout its lifetime by an expanded Scottish Government academic advisory panel that will draw on the best available science, knowledge and expertise and grow the evidence base. Also published today is a consultation building on the recommendations from the farmer-led groups, the paper that sets out a number of key questions on the recommendations, which are intended to inform wider work on the redevelopment of agricultural policy and the replacement of the Common Agricultural Policy. So Chris, thinking very quickly in the context of thinking of the product of our land-based agricultural businesses and the food which you and I and the people of Scotland eat, do you think that the government's announcement here of further consultation is going to help cut emissions and produce high-quality food in a more sustainable way?
I think it is, yes. In the long term, of course it is. And I would like to point to the wee flag just on this side here. I'm thinking about our good friend Ruth Watson. Going forward, we need investment in Scottish farms, so that Scottish farmers can produce the high quality produce that Scotland is renowned for. And obviously, if we can do that in a cleaner, greener manner, then obviously that will help go towards Scotland reaching its targets, which is, as we know, are actually set 5 years before the UK targets. So yeah, I think it's great. These announcements going forward, again, hark back to what I was saying earlier on, is about what this government do at this moment in time, whilst we are still in this pandemic, is finding a road to recovery, not just for the NHS, but also for Scottish business. And when we talk about Scottish business, we're always thinking about the high street and stuff like that. We have to remember that farmers are an integral part of Scottish business, and it's welcome news that they've been included in the plans.
Thanks, Chris. What we'll do now is that we'll touch on three small stories that each drop out of the story we had at the top of the programme related to the announcement of these 100-day priorities for the Scottish Government. Firstly, the Scottish 4G infill programme has delivered 18 mobile phone masts since it was established in February 2020, with 14 new masts built within the first 100 days of this new Scottish Government. As a result, hundreds of homes and businesses in rural communities, including the Borders, Dumfries and Galloway, Moray, Aberdeenshire, the Highlands, Shetland, and more recently Argyll and Bute and Orkney, can access high-speed mobile connectivity for the first time. 7 of the 14 new masts have been activated, and the further 7 are due to come online by November. More than £14 million will be invested to support North East-based workers impacted by the pandemic and the oil and gas downturn. The funding will provide opportunities for more than 3,000 individuals in Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire through training and enterprise projects across a number of sectors, including entrepreneurship, tourism and energy transition. This includes a climate emergency training programme to help businesses transition towards net zero and a scheme to support employers develop business plans to ensure long-term sustainable jobs. And finally, the latest round of the Digital Boost Fund has potentially secured £25 million of additional private sector investment in Scotland's growing digital economy. Thousands of bids for funding were received after the registration portal opened at 11 a.m. on Tuesday the 24th of August. Due to the exceptional response, the portal has closed, but businesses will be able to register their interest in any future Digital Boost funding and will be able to access free support and advice. The £25 million fund offers small to medium-sized businesses grants on a 50-50 investment basis worth between £2,500 and £20,000. So Chris, thinking about these three announcements, I sense that there's a focus across them all on employment and on future employment, future sustainable green jobs for the people of Scotland. Do you think that, am I right in that? Do you think there's a theme here that the Scottish Government is seeking to promote retraining and retraining for a green economy?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, I think you're right in that assertion, Andrew, and going forward as well. Further underlines the necessity that Scotland needs to be in charge of its own immigration policy. We need inward migration. As welcome as the fact that there are new jobs being created to take over jobs that are due to be redundant in the near future, such as the exploration of fossil fuel and whatnot, and what have you. It still requires Scotland is a vast, vast place which can house many people who want to migrate to Scotland in order to take up a new life and new employment challenges and all the rest of it. So again, this is a key argument as to why Scotland needs to be in charge of its own immigration and migration policies. And again, I'll hark back to what I was saying earlier on. It's about the path that we are, or should I say, the Scottish Government are looking to build in order to, take Scotland out of the pandemic and, lay down a foundation baseline for the economic future going forward. So that we can, at the same token, make no mistake, we have to remember that the COVID pandemic, whenever we come out of it, COVID is going to be around, like every other virus, that comes around, any one person's lifetime. And COVID will be going forward pretty much the same as the winter flu. People will need top-up jags and whatever else. But again, it's about planning for the future, and clearly you can see that it would take a complete nincompoop, and I use that word because I'm thinking of Scottish Tories, who have taken a thinly veiled swipe at these announcements today, saying that they don't go far enough. This is a radical expression of what Scotland wants to be able to do and is doing, again, with one hand tied behind our back. Think about what we could do with both hands free at this moment in time. And the other thing that I wanted to really touch on is the announcement of people getting access to 4G digital connection and all the rest of it. I'm looking forward to those wonderful people being able to tune into broadcasts in Scotland and getting the real news.
That's a great point, Chris. And one little thing, it crosses my mind, when we were discussing the HGV drivers, there's an argument that it's a symptom that the labour market in the UK is dysfunctional and needs to be fixed. Developing that a little bit, in terms of these 3,000 long-term sustainable jobs in the North East, where do you think these jobs are going to come from?
They are going to come, in the rural economy, and people in corporate business, blue chip businesses, are going to see the investment in Scotland and are actually going to think twice about relocating, to bring more jobs to back into Scotland. We've seen there's always a scare story of a mass exodus of companies leaving Scotland, and whenever independence is called for, that's complete and utter tosh. any company would wouldn't give Scotland an overlook if we were within the European Union and those companies being able to trade, within the wider trading bloc of the EU. So make no mistake, once and everything's linked. Everything is linked because when you think of it, companies need to know that there's 4G, available. When they're looking for premises, when they're looking for warehouses, they also need to know that there's a sustainable amount of people in the community of a working age, who are willing to take on, the jobs that they're looking for. And again, it all wonderfully harks back to the fact of obviously Scotland being an independent country, but being able to being able to borrow, to being able to invest, to being able to have the say over our immigration policy, our procurement, and everything is all linked. And
Of course.
I mean, I actually think, without going into a socialist rant, but it is against our human rights to suppress our desire, to have another independence referendum. I personally think that Westminster are, denying that. No one person should deny that. Scotland's
Of
got a
course, Chris.
clear path. We can see that through all these stories. So, how can anybody deny that?
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you. And we'll come to the final story, which is an important one for this evening. Finally, the local charity Eastwood Refugee Aid looks set to raise over £1,000 to help welcome Afghan refugees to Scotland. The group, which works to support refugees, raised its target of £500 within a day of launching their appeal, and the amount raised is now £740, with 24 days to go before the appeal closes. The link to the appeal will be on the screen now. So, Chris, could you tell us a little bit more about the work of Eastwood Refugee Aid, and also tell us about what it is that the charity is intending to do with this particular fundraising activity?
Well, I'm absolutely delighted that, first of all, obviously for Broadcasting Scotland to give me the platform just to comment on the news, but to give me this platform to comment on the humanitarian work that I do. This is absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much. Yes, we're acting swiftly and fast, for any imminent arrival of, again, we're unclear of the numbers of Afghan families that could possibly be relocated to East Renfrewshire. But we're ready to step in, even if East Renfrewshire doesn't have any families allocated to them. We could easily set up and help families in Western Bartonshire, or further afield over in the East Coast, or wherever in Scotland. It's not just the south side of Glasgow. We're the more money that we can get, obviously the more families we can help, and these families undoubtedly will need white goods. They will need furniture. They will need bedding. Again, we're sitting on a small stockpile of clothes, which we're looking to. We're constantly looking for premises so that we can, take in more donations, from the good people of Scotland. That are, being absolutely brilliant in helping us going forward. And again, this is all born out of an idea that we, one of our founding members, Anne McKechnie, when she witnessed the horrendous scenes of Alan Turdy being taken out of the sea, and she said that we just have to do something. And a group of us, jumped into action, and we put a plan in place along with a well-established humanitarian aid worker, Robert McGilvery, who gave us some excellent advice as to how to, do it, because we were all green. We had, we didn't know what we were doing, and he set out the plan, and we have went and visited the jungle when it was in full flow, and also the satellite camp just up the road. And we have constantly forged links with SAFAR, with Refugee, with Care for Cali, and Biryani's and Bananas as well. My good friend Abid Pervez down in Bristol, who runs the Belgian kitchen. So going forward, because obviously the pandemic has prevented us from going over to France, we thought, well, we can do what we do in France, we can do here. So again, I need to point out the fact that Scotland is not in control of. We don't have a say over the numbers that are coming into Scotland. We're waiting for the Westminster to tell us allocation, which I think is a horrible word when you're talking about human life. But we're, obviously joined up with our local MP, Kirsten Oswald, who's been fantastically supportive. Councillors, one of the councillors in East Riding Council, Councillor Colin Merrick, who has contributed on this show as well, is also an integrated part of the group. Again, we have to point out that the group is completely non-political. We don't affiliate to any one group, any one political party, because politics, when it comes to humanitarian issues, politics should be kept well away from, people's lives,
Absolutely,
basically.
Chris. Absolutely. Thank you. That's been a great introduction, and thank you for explaining the work of the Eastwood Refugee Aid Organisation, and I hope that the fundraising campaign continues to be so successful. And that is the news in Scotland at 7 this evening. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, culture and current affairs. If you would like to support us, then please consider subscribing or donating to Broadcasting Scotland. You will find the link to do that on the screen. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, either behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, or in any other way that helps our work and promotes the station, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot and send us a message there. Meantime, I will be back tomorrow at 7 o'clock with the next edition of Scotland at 7, so please tune in then. I'd like to say very many thanks to Chris for joining us this evening and sharing his thoughts and wisdom and experience.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much.
And that's the way it is at very nearly Scotland at 8. Thank you for joining us on Broadcasting Scotland. Remember that we are all the Glasgow girls, and I hope that you have a very peaceful evening.